We've had a very big week in the state of Texas. A lot has happened, and I think we got to keep covering it. Most importantly, obviously, we were graced by a visit from a very important dignitary of state, Mr. Boris Johnson. We could play a couple seconds of this.
Thank you very much, and God bless you all, and good luck with cutting the budget and cutting taxes for the people of Texas. Because
Gavel. Give us a gavel.
Give us a gavel.
Yes, sir.
Okay, we gavel you out. There you go. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
So yes, Mr. Boris Johnson did visit my home, and I was driving around town hoping that maybe I could catch a glimpse, but I should have gone to the Capitol. There's something about this Boris Johnson thing that I think is really funny because basically, if you don't follow Texas politics, last week we were coming towards the end of the legislative session, which has now been extended, but we'll get into that in a second. Basically, like Boris Johnson comes to Texas, and the entire GOP just goes into complete free fall and civil war. Like literally that day, Boris Johnson gavels in the Senate. And there was like a red wedding style night in the Texas legislature. The House and the Senate, who are both obviously run by Republicans, have been feuding for a long time, and it just exploded shortly after Boris Johnson gavels in that session, with the House and the Senate killing each other's bills, putting poison pills on a whole host of things. Of course, if you watched the show last week, you know we played this video of Dade Phelan, the Speaker of the Texas House, that was sort of pushed out, very likely by friends and allies of our Attorney General Ken Paxton. Dade Phelan appearing very, very inebriated, if you haven't seen that. And the legislative session ends. Governor Abbott has now extended this, has called for the first special session, and there'll probably be more. Remember, if you're not familiar with Texas politics, we have one of the shortest, I think, if not the shortest, certainly out of all the major states in population, the shortest legislative window. It's every 2 years for only a couple months, which is pretty incredible when you think about how big Texas is, that we only have a functional government for a few months out of, every 2 years. But Bojo comes to town, shit gets fucked up, everyone's fighting with each other, and then all of this weird stuff happens. So Ken Paxton calls on the Speaker of the House to resign from his office for this video of him seemingly being very inebriated. And then shortly after it is revealed that the House has launched their own investigation into Ken Paxton that's been going on for a while for allegations of very extreme corruption. If you don't already know, before all of these House charges came out, Ken Paxton is somebody who is always in the news for his willingness to push the law. He has open investigations against him for securities fraud. So serious, by the way, that he faces 99 years in prison for these. So this is not some kind of slap on the wrist bullshit. This is very serious stuff. But
just been the Attorney General.
It's just the Attorney General, right? Just normal Attorney General stuff, right? But what I think really irked the House was Ken Paxton, whose office is always in scandal, asked yet again for the Texas government, the taxpayers here, to pay for another one of his his settlements. There was a $3.3 million settlement that was agreed to with former staffers who were threatened by Ken Paxton when they were working in his office, and he had asked the government to pay his bills for him again. So this happens. Paxton calls on Dade Phelan to resign, and then the House releases its investigation into him, and it was much more broad than I think a lot of people expected. Shortly after that, there is this video, which we played last week, or I played on the Griscom stream, of a dumpster outside of the Attorney General's office on fire. Now, to be clear and fair, the Attorney General's office came out and they said they were looking for the perpetrator. That person has reportedly been arrested. The claim is that somebody just threw a cigarette in the dumpster. Regardless if it's true or not, or if there's any nefarious play, Very, very, very strange stuff that has been happening. So these charges come out against Ken Paxton, and they're serious. He has been charged with abuse of official capacity for diverting senior employees to perform work that benefited Paul, this person who is a real estate developer in the city of Austin, where the Attorney General's office provided at least $72,000 in taxpayer-funded labor costs. Again, just for some rich fuck in town. Who just happens to be a major donor to Ken Paxton's office. Misuse of public information for allegedly providing that same major donor with an internal FBI file related to investigation into the developer. And another charge of misapplication of fiduciary property for allegedly hiring an outside lawyer for $25,000 to work inside the Attorney General's office without the knowledge or consent of senior staff to perform work that principally benefited the real estate developer in the city of Austin, right? Extreme stuff. But this is all in a backdrop of the House and the Senate effectively being at war throughout most of the session. Now, don't get this misunderstood idea into your head that like the House is some kind of group of like radicals or conscientious Republicans. These are people vying for power over each other. And if you don't know anything about Texas politics has been a one-party state rule for a very long time. So all of the people in positions of power, they want to be the big dog.
I tell you what, all those boys are, well, maybe they're missing a trick, not fundraising off of dumb Democrats in like suburban New York. Like to say like, oh, this guy's against Paxton. Well, let's give him some money. But you might need to do that where like Texans don't get offended by it. But
no, well, I mean, and you even had some House members in the Democratic Party vote present and not take a vote against impeaching Paxton. Paxton releases a statement calling the Speaker of the House again, who is a Republican, like full stop Republican, of being liberal Speaker Dave Phelan for sabotaging his work as Attorney General. Quote, Paxton says, every allegation is easily disproved, and I look forward to continuing my fight for conservative Texas values. As I said earlier, there was a bloodbath on Tuesday night. This vote comes out on Thursday evening in the House, where overwhelmingly Ken Paxton is impeached by the House. And the impeachment, just to be clear what the process is, impeachment, House brings impeachment charges, says that there needs to be a trial. Then it goes to the Senate, where, by the way, it's a body of only 31 people. One of those people is Ken Paxton's wife. But let's just play just a second of this video right quick. This is sort of the fallout, because these are the people that Ken Paxton, Patrick, and Donald Trump have been calling liberals. So we got a second of Ken Paxton defending himself, and then we'll go to the House.
The fact that I was prohibited from presenting evidence to defend myself reveals that this shameful process was curated from the start as an act of political retribution.
So this is about facts, and this is about evidence, and at the end of the day, my call.
Not trying to be stereotypical, but this is the guy that they're calling a liberal. Right? It's just no.
Yeah, like unless he takes that suit off and he's got like a full sleeve tattoo and he owns a bicycle shop, like I don't think he's a lib.
The mustache is pretty new. I'll give him that. It's a good look. It's a glow up. It's kind of like when Ted Cruz grew a beard. You're like, all right, somebody gave him some good advice.
That was too good of advice, honestly. Whoever, you gotta stop whoever's giving that advice.
Corruption. And that's why we're proceeding to a trial in the Texas Senate.
So Ken Paxton is now impeached, which means he is effectively, his office is on pause. He is on the sidelines until either Governor Greg Abbott puts a replacement in or these proceedings finish. The plan right now is that the trial has to be held before August, I believe, 28th, which is probably bad for Ken Paxton, because it means that this can be kicked down the road for a few months, maybe get another guy. Because I'm sorry, one of the nicest and cushiest jobs in the Republican Party right now is to be the Texas Attorney General, because all you do is sue the Biden administration on whatever the fuck you want, right? It is like a sweet gig. It gives you a lot of national attention. There are people, I'm sure, who are clamoring to be in that position, and I'm sure would do just as much damage as Ken Paxton has as the attorney general, but maybe without the fucking $1 million indictment sitting over his head.
Existing legal baggage, yeah.
So, and again, like, remember that one of the things that really probably set this off was the fact that he asked for money again to pay for his legal wrongdoings, asked for taxpayer money to pay for a settlement for him. And Ken Paxton, of course, Matt, I'm sure you know, acted very innocently by calling up the vast majority of the Republicans in the Texas House and threatening them with political consequences if they took a stand against him, right? Acted like a mafia boss, and it seems like the Republicans in the Texas House are done. I say let them fight. The more that this can distract them and take them away from other things is good. It certainly took up the most of the energy in the last few days of the Texas legislative session. Again, we're in a special session now, but that's a limited scope. But the last thing I want to do is to just remind you who Ken Paxton is, and correct the record a little bit, because Ken Paxton did what any innocent person would do. Went and talked to Mr. Steve Bannon.
It's certainly critical to my state, and that's why we fought off these 12 lawsuits. We had them in Houston, we had them in San Antonio, we had them in Austin, we had them in the counties where you'd have the most liberal judges. And it was a concerted effort nationally with lots of money going into it. And just knowing that we had 12 lawsuits that we had to win. And if we had lost one of them, like if we lost Harris County, Trump won by 620,000 votes in Texas. Harris County mail-in ballots that they wanted to send out were 2.5 million. Those were all illegal, and we were able to stop every one of them. Had we not done that, we would have been in the very same situation. We would have been on election night. I was watching election night, and I knew when I saw what was happening in these other states, that would have been Texas. We would have been in the same boat. We would have been one of those battleground states that they were counting votes in Harris County for 3 days, and Donald Trump would have lost the election.
Okay, so let's say one thing up top. Ken Paxton has been a willing advocate for Trump in his election fraud nonsense, right? But let's be very clear about what Ken Paxton is talking about here, because it's a very funny double move that he's doing. What he's talking about, just to correct the record, because a lot of people have gotten really worked up, and I'm not saying it's good, right? But a lot of people, I think, and he's also doing this on purpose. He wants you as a lib out there to think what you're thinking, that he's saying that basically we like eradicated 2.5 million votes off the voter rolls that would have flipped the election in Texas to Joe Biden instead of Trump. No, what he's talking about doing there was that he was fighting against mail-in ballots in the state of Texas, because there were pushes to extend mail-in ballots in the 2020 election so that people might not be exposed to the COVID-19 virus when they went to vote for president. So he was arguing against people who were saying that they should have access to a mail-in ballot because they might have, they don't have immunity to the COVID-19 virus. Therefore, they should get, a medical ruling that allows them to vote via mail, which we don't have in the state of Texas generally, right? Without some exceptions. He's doing that because it gets you worked up. And then Ken Paxton is like the fighter against election fraud for the Republicans. And then for the Republican people, they get to say Ken Paxton's out there fighting for us, because Ken Paxton, despite all of his, failings, all of his corruption scandals, remains wildly popular with the Republican Party base, not just in the state of Texas, but nationally, and certainly with Donald Trump, who has been putting his thumb on the scale in this state.
Is Trump? How active is Trump in?
Trump has been very active. I should have pulled up some of the Truth Social. I usually have to go through you to get those things. I'm not.
Well, because I saw, I saw an influencer, a former Trump 45 official. It was a D1 cheerleader. I forget what her name is, but she was like, "This is the uniparty. The rhinos joining in the uniparty attack on Trump," and it's fascinating to see that split be elaborated. To me, I don't know. Maybe Trump has to take his allies where he gets them, but even for Trump, who I think is a criminal,
Yeah.
I think basically like a lifelong criminal, like New York real estate, I think Paxton is a little bit too obvious in it. But I wouldn't blow any of my this is the uniparty stuff on a guy who's under indictment. Like, I don't know how long ago. This has been like this like for so long. It's wild that whole state.
It's absolutely wild. And from as of today, his wife has not recused herself from voting again in a very small body, by the way, in this trial, which will be very interesting to watch. But the
And so this
fact,
goes to the Senate now, and my understanding from you is that the Senate is more right wing than the House. Is that correct?
I think the Senate is more loyal to like the big three, being like Patrick, Paxton, and Abbott
Okay.
right now, because the House gets its power through Dade Phelan, who has taken a role in sort of being against Paxton, challenging Patrick. That's why they're calling him liberal, Phelan. Um, so anyways, we'll be watching this. I think that like the thing is though that the fact that the trial is going to be so much later probably doesn't work in Paxton's favor as much as you might think. Because one, he's out of power. It creates an opportunity for maybe Abbott. Abbott has been very silent on the past few days. This is Tuesday, May 30th. Maybe he says something while we're live or something later. Who knows? But as of now, he hasn't really said too much about it. About whether or not he would appoint somebody as an interim AG, to operate in the next few months. But like, let's just say he does. I mean, that takes some of the luster off of Ken Paxton. It gives the right wing a new person to rally around. Two, it also like it extends the amount of time. Like Paxton's going. The reason I want to bring up the Paxton thing is not to like defend Paxton's honor. It's to like make this point that Paxton has this opportunity right now to get a lot of media play because he's in the news. So he's going to go up there and try to say the most outrageous stuff. Ken Paxton played a huge role in purging people and trying to prevent people from voting in Harris County. It's not to say that like he's not participating and trying to deny people the right to vote, but he wants to sit here and say, I took 2.5 million people away for being able to vote in that election, right? Because it makes the Republicans who are going to be loyal to him feel a need to be loyal to him. Anyways, the point is that in 3 months and 2 months or whatever, in August, his ability to be able to project that power might be more and more limited. I don't know how it will turn out. I'm not going to sit here and make predictions, but I would imagine that Ken Paxton probably wanted to trial sooner rather than later. So if anything, the fact that it's been pushed backwards probably is not very good for Mr. Ken. So we'll be watching this closely. We'll have our Paxton watch on the program over the summer. I know Matt's very sad that a fellow North Dakotan is being treated very, very.
Well, yeah, I mean, I was just gonna say this is yet another case of a guy deciding to take his political acumen to the South and getting a very frigid reception. And you hear about Southern hospitality, but I mean, there's another example of a
Is
guy
this
who has
Southern hospitality?
there's a guy,
That'd be actually, Matt. You should take on like as just as a bit for the next couple months as a Paxton defender.
Well, I'm saying that Ken Paxton, he has North Dakota lineage. Also, Matt Gaetz been getting a rough deal, I understand, with some certain things. He also comes from a North Dakota family. So, you wonder why we don't leave, because that's how we get treated.